thing. How do you approach how you want to play versus the personnel you have?
Yeah.
Because you're talking about the circumstances in Europe where you were essentially forced to play a certain way,
Yeah.
and that brought you success. In the NBA, as a head coach, you can have some influence probably
Yeah.
on the type of people that the front office brings in. But ultimately, to have success in the league, right, you've got to tailor how you want to play to your personnel. And I'll give you an example. Like, I remember my year with you and Alvin. Um, it was a lot of random,
Yeah.
and I like playing that way. I thrive playing that way
Yeah.
because I'm smart
Yes.
and
And you
I
move
can
well
make
without the ball.
I move well without the ball. I can make adjustments. I mean, I remember we used to run that 21 action, and
Yeah.
every time we got in the bonus, I would run into the guy guarding the ball, and I'd flail my arms, and I get to the free throw line.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, great. I know I'm going to get 2 points a game just out of our offense
Yeah.
because of that randomness of 21 action, which, we would flow into. There was no call, right? I'm just like, I have the freedom to do this. But we're also playing with young guys. And I remember having a conversation with Griff after the season, and I just remember thinking like, hey, some of these guys, like, I think would do better if there was structure. And then we kind of took it to an extreme following that. And that didn't work either. And then with you, like, you get to the situation where you're now the head coach, and you get to, this is how we're going to play. But you've got Anthony Edwards, you've got Karl-Anthony Towns. Then the following season, they bring in Rudy.
Yeah.
So you're constantly having to adjust this like basic concept of how do we want to play offensively. And of course, Gobert changes the paradigm defensively.
Yeah.
But how do you sort of approach that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's literally what we've been kind of morphing through at the moment right here. So first of all, you got to nail the high notes. Like, to be an efficient offense, you still have to, get to the right shots. Now, the distribution of the shots are different. Like, the year that I first went to New Orleans, when we had DeMarcus and Anthony Davis, like, we were elite at the rim and we were elite at getting to the free throw line. But we didn't shoot a ton of threes and we didn't make a ton of threes. But because we played with enough pace and we were able to like live at the rim and benefit from the offensive rebounds and the free throw. So that was one way that we could have an efficient offense. When you were there, we were probably way more of a high volume 3-point team, right? Play with a lot of pace, randomness, shot a lot of threes. Yeah, and I agree probably with certain players that they always need structure. And I think there's been players that we've not been able to maximize in certain systems that we've had because of that. I believe right now, as we head into this next year, which is hopefully a complete season with, a Cat and Rudy, we need more structure, just because like the structure is going to provide us the right spacing for the two bigs to kind of stay out of each other's way. I think at times they got into each other's way. Offensively, we weren't great. We were pretty medium last year as a result of, we didn't take enough threes probably. We were a pretty low volume 3-point shooting team here. So we got to get some guys to take a few more threes. Some of that D'Angelo was a little bit like what we talked about earlier. He's good in the mid range. He likes to pull up, but out of those pick and roll situations, we're not creating enough of the right shots, perhaps. So lots of little things we can do, but I think structure will help us do that. But as long as we're like trying to get to the right shots, I think that's the biggest thing. Like, the rest of it is you have to coach it into existence. It's like anything else. Like I say all the time, these analytics, they're guides. They're not gods, JJ. Like, we're not doing this stuff just because the numbers say it. Like, we have to figure out what's best for our team. And if we're within a certain paradigm, we're going to be okay. And maybe we take a few more mid-range than like some other teams that I'd had ideally. But we have to augment that with like get into the line more or living on the offensive glass. Like last year, we weren't very good on the offensive glass. There's no reason we shouldn't have been. We should have been better on the offensive glass. But we decided to punt offensive rebounding to be good in transition. And with the two bigs on the floor, we weren't. So we didn't benefit from either,
Right.
So then actually I have a report here just like sifting through, all the things that we got to do better next year. And it's like, it's pretty interesting when you do these self-examinations, like how to connect the pieces from what from one team to another, and that's where I feel confident going into this season coming up, because I think we've learned a lot from our personnel grouping last year, even though like the sample size was chopped up. it gives us a good place,
First of all, I'm glad you said that the analytics are a guide, not a god.
Yeah.
Because I do believe there is a balance that you have to find. I've talked about this with you, and I've mentioned it before on the podcast. Like towards the end of my career, I had to find that balance. And truthfully, if I look back at the beginning of my career, I wish I had played for coaches that were like, "Hey, high volume threes. We want you taking 8 to 10 threes a game." I had coaches like that at the end of my career, right? I might not be 17th all time. I might be in the top 10. You never know.